Well, hello and welcome once again to the DCL podcast, where we're inviting you to sit back, relax, and we'll be on our way shortly. Well, welcome back to the DCL podcast, your podcast to help you and your family cruise a little smarter when the ship starts sailing. And I'd like to welcome back to our show all the way down in California. He's been hanging out in his kitchen for a year now. How you doing today, Chris?
Oh, living my best California life. It was like 75, sunny, nice day.
I'm totally jealous. It's like one of those like winter weeks up here where it's dark, it rains, it's dismal, and you just want to see the sun. So I would take California any day right now. So, hey, Chris, before we jump into this, you want to hear a joke about construction?
That depends. Is it a dad joke?
Well, I'm still working on it, so.
Okay. All right, then I want to hear it.
No, you missed the point. It was so bad. It was so bad you missed it.
Oh my gosh. You're still working on it? No.
I'm still constructing it. Get it? All right. That was bad. So, all right. Let's just jump in it. We are going to turn back to our Port Adventure series. And one of the great things about doing this series is getting to bring back people that we haven't talked to in quite a while. And I was really excited to do this show when he reached out to me to be part of it. And I'd like to welcome back to the show Adam from Pennsylvania. How you doing today, Adam?
Good. How are you? I had to have you beat, both of you. Today we got about a foot of snow. I spent my day digging out.
Shoveling. I've never done that. I've never been in a place where I had to do that. I don't think that I could do that. I'm not built for it anymore. I missed the opportunity to be conditioned to shovel snow as a child. And now as an adult, I don't think my body will allow it.
Well, I'll let you use the snowblower. You can just stand behind it and push. Or not even push, just kind of guide it. It does all the work for you.
Oh, okay. I did not even know that what you just said existed in residential settings.
Yeah, man. You got to have it out here or you're going to be crying.
That I think that might be one of the funniest things I've ever heard. You've never heard of a snowblower before.
No. I mean, I assume I don't know what you call the thing that shovels snow off of road, a snowplow.
Yeah.
I know about those, but I didn't know there was a snow blower for people's homes. You know what I learned about because I moved to New York? Salt. Mm-hmm. Before I moved to New York and lived in New York for a couple of years, I did not understand that people would salt things to keep ice from forming. I literally had to ask one of my friends, why are they putting salt on the sidewalk? And they were like, because it's going to snow tonight. And I was like, so? They were like, they don't want the sidewalk to ice. And literally blew my mind, had no idea that existed. California has ruined me for multiple weather condition type states.
Well, with that kind of segue there, our last Port Adventure show, we talked about Alaska. Let's turn our sights on a little bit warmer place. What do you think, Chris?
Please take me to the Caribbean.
All right.
Or the Greek Isles. Where are we going today, Steve?
Well, let's go to the Caribbean, and that's why we brought Adam on.
Fine.
So as we jump into it, we all three of us here know that cruising is going to happen again. One of the biggest questions that we always get is what type of port adventures would you recommend going to some of the different places? So while the ships are paused right now, I thought it'd be kind of fun to kind of start this series through the year and talk about all the different ports or some of the different ports that Disney Cruise Line sails to. And so today we are going to talk about basically the two islands that the Fantasy generally goes to. And we'll start off with Tortola, which is, how do I say it, Chris? The most beautiful island your cruising friends never tell you about.
Yeah, no, why didn't anyone tell me about it is what I said as we were sailing up to it, because it's majestic and it's mountainous and it rises out of the sea and it's green. Also, the British Virgin Islands are there's a lot of them. It's not like that whole area is surrounded by little tiny islands.
So, Adam, as we were talking before we started the show today, your family, you know what, I'm just going to let you jump into it because now I've totally drawn a blank, but you've got a lot of experience in Tortola and St. Thomas. Let's kick it off with Tortola. Give us a little background on your time down there.
Actually, it all started with St. Thomas. I was 10 years old, so early 90s. Right before Hurricane Andrew and after Hurricane Andrew, I remember because it devastated the islands. We used to go down every year for a week or so, a little family vacation. over the couple years of doing that, my parents migrated over to Tortola because it was like off the beaten path, and they spent about a good 20 years going in the winter. Started off at 2 weeks, and then by the end it was 2-3 months. They actually kind of had to stop going because as they got older, my stepdad was allergic to bees, and he got stung by something there, and there was a whole issue trying to get him to the hospital. And they realized, hey, if anything ever serious happens to us here, you're a good 45 minutes away from a hospital. So they kind of changed it up. That's why they stopped going about 4 years ago. So yeah, pretty much every year from 2000 till 2015, I would go to Tortola.
I mean, lucky. I feel like that would be amazing. Were you just doing did you say you're just doing vacation homes? Basically,
yeah, they
would
rent
pick
it.
a different one each time.
No, they rent it 2 different ones, all in the same area on the west end of the island. You actually could see Jost Van Dyke from it. It was over it was Cane Garden Bay area on the other side of the island. So yeah, they had this beautiful house. I mean, it was beautiful. It no windows, just wide open. I mean, it was 75, 80 degrees every day. You just slept outside, kind of like, you had your doors open, and their house really kind of didn't. It was like on a cliff, so your porch and your living room was just open. Like you couldn't close your house up. You had your bedrooms that could close, but half of your house was wide open. It was just a different way to live. I mean, it was great.
I think I had that experience the first time I went to Hawaii, walking into the hotel that we stayed at, and the whole lobby is outside, and it just kind of blew me away coming from, well, I kind of grew up all over the place, but spent a lot of time in Nebraska, so going from Nebraska to a place like that, it was just amazing. Let me give a little background on Tortola. I've just got a couple things to throw out there, and then we'll talk about some of your experiences that you've had there, Adam. So it's the largest, as Chris said, as part of the British Virgin Islands. It's the largest and most populated of them. It flies under the British flag, but they actually use US dollars for official currency. So if you're there, if you got dollars, you don't need to worry about changing anything. Of course, everybody, I think, uses debit cards and Venmo these days. That I'm not even sure how much people use that type of stuff in the islands. A lot of different attractions, a lot of marine activities. But I think one of the things that I saw that was kind of interesting, it's one of the drier islands in the Caribbean. And the reason why I bring that up, which is kind of interesting, is that they don't have as much rain, so they don't have as much runoff into the water, so the water tends to be a lot clearer for snorkeling and those type of activities. And also just the makeup of the islands, the water tends to be pretty calm around there, so small boat excursions are it's kind of a great place if you want to get onto a small boat, if you're one of those people or families that may have some motion sickness stuff where that you may normally deter you. And it's listed as one of the safest and most crime-free islands. Some different different experiences there throughout the island. So let's just jump in it with you, Adam. What are some of the things that you've experienced there, either yourself or as a family? Yeah,
so I never went with my young kids. So I never did the whole family thing. Everything I did, you could do with families, but it was always as like adults only. So I guess the number one thing for me in Tortola, which is actually not in Tortola, is going over to Jost Van Dyke. Absolutely the best time, whether you just want to like a calmer beach, or you want to party with your friends and go to Sagi Dollar Bar and have a good old time. When we used to stay on the west end of the island, the ferry dock was right there. So we just hop on the ferry, and they would run multiple ferries a day to Jost Van Dyke. You go there, spend the day. You actually could spend the night. They have a little hotel over there too. But you talk about off the beaten path. Like, they shut the generators down at night. That's the kind of island that is. That is my number one, I would say adult, maybe older children thing to do there. It's a beach. You can bring young kids there, but it's still a process of getting there. So lugging a stroller and a bunch of young kids over there, and you also have to take the open air taxis to get to the beach area. So if you're not comfortable with that with young children, then I would say don't do that. So that would be my number one thing over in Tortola. Is not actually on Tortola, but it still is the British Virgin Islands.
As far as like beach type stuff, snorkeling there, or more just kind of a beach to play on?
Just the beach to play in. You can snorkel everywhere there, really. But overall, it's just a good time. Like, it's just, every time I look back on there, whether I was with my friends, my fiance, or my wife, at the time she was my fiance, my parents, every time I was there, you just look back and have happy memories. there's a couple different bars, and you can just walk up and down the beach and just have a good old time.
Did they have the zip line there when you were there? Or is that kind of newer?
That is newer.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that when they invested in the cruise port, if I remember correctly, it's what the locals said to us, that Disney paid a lot for that pier. And it's really only like, I think Disney and Carnival, like there's not a lot of cruise lines that go in there, and Disney has preference. They made it seem, at least when they were building it, that Disney put some money into it to get preferential treatment. So I don't know if that's true. It was all local talk, but you remember it was even before I was ever on a Disney cruise, I heard about that. So I remember it just stuck in my head.
It's kind of amazing, really. You step right off the boat and you're right into kind of a really nice shopping area. And we did a snorkeling tour off a smaller boat the time we were there. And it was literally just a quick walk down the pier to jump on that boat to take us on the adventure that we did. So I think they've got it really set up nicely there.
The other thing, there's two other things off the island before that is all in the British Virgin Islands that I would say are something like almost a must do. If you were going to go down there and just had one day to see something that would amaze you, would be go over to Virgin Gorda and see the baths, which is these giant rock formations. You have to take a ferry. It's a process. You could rent a private boat, I guess, to take you there. It is just amazing to see. It's amazing to experience. If I would say you're only going to be there one day, that would be the thing you should try to do. So I don't know if either of you two tried that when you were there, but it definitely is. It's an amazing thing to see. Just the sights, the rocks, just to walk in them. It's like awesome.
So it's basically a bunch of pools, and then it looks like you kind of wind your way through. There's some hidden caves and whatnot. Is this is something that for younger children too that could do that, or is it kind of your like older kids?
You can bring younger kids there because there is a beach. I don't remember there ever being anything dangerous, but again, this was a little bit ago. But I also wasn't in dad brain then either. Things that I would think be dangerous now, I probably didn't think were dangerous when I was in my mid-20s. Yeah, I think it's definitely older kids. But again, it's a beach, so you can go sit at the beach and you guys could go explore the caves and the rock. It's just amazing.
Perfect. Well, what else do you got for Tortola?
All right. So on the beach stuff. So if you just want to go there and go to the beach, you got Cane Garden Bay, you got Long Bay, both great beaches. There are some like other beaches you can go to, but you would want to rent a car because some of them aren't like very popular. So that's the whole thing with Tortola. They don't really have like the best infrastructure if you compare to like St. Thomas. They're again more off the beaten path. So you have just a lot less to do there compared to the other islands, but that's a good thing. So, you have your beaches. The only thing I would say about those is they tend to get crowded if there's a lot of cruise ships in. I know a lot would probably be 2. I don't think they ever have more than 2, but you definitely we would know when the boats were there just by looking at how many people were at the beach. It definitely was something to pay attention to. Same thing with the baths. Like I would imagine if there were multiple cruise ships in the vicinity, they would be very crowded. But not necessarily that's a bad thing. It's just something to be aware of. So you have the beaches. And then on the eastern side of the island by the airport, there's a place called Scrub Island. They have like a little water taxi that can take you back and forth. And it's like a resort. And they got beaches, restaurants. And what I actually did there was one of those scuba diving where they teach you how, but they let you go like 30, 40 feet in off the sand. And you just walk in. And you just slowly go down. I'm not certified or anything like that, but you can go scuba diving there, which you can do everywhere. But I just remember doing that there. It was a good time. And so that's something else different you can do on the eastern side of the island. But the whole thing with it is you go there, you just kind of have to have a plan. Because if you're not familiar with those islands, the cab drivers are aggressive. They'll help you out. They'll follow you to the day. They'll be your guy. You just got to, make sure you're aware of what they charge and what the deal is. Just don't assume anything. And a lot of them are those open air, like they'll try to put 20 people in a taxi to go to the beach type thing. So you just have to be aware of all that stuff, typical Caribbean island stuff. It's just something to keep your mind on.
This is one I just happen to be more familiar with because I went there. The only thing I would say is we wanted to go to the baths and it was sold out. It's one of those things where if you want to go to the baths on Tortola, you have to book that pretty quickly. We went to book and we were silver and we couldn't book. and we booked at midnight. So just flagging that, like, there are certain excursions that sell out quickly, depending on how many ships are in the port that day. And for us, there were 2 ships. That forced us into a different excursion. That was awesome. So I'm not complaining, but definitely if I go back to Tortola, I would go to the baths because that sounds really cool.
And that was the time you guys drove around the island. Was that there or was that St. Thomas?
No, that was there. We rented Jeeps. We didn't rent. Everybody got a Jeep. Like every little crew got a Jeep, and we had a tour guide, and we had little walkie-talkies, and we would like talk back and forth to each other, and we went and saw the cool things there were to see around. That was my experience, and I would highly recommend something like that, like a way to see the island. But I also think that the baths are probably pretty cool.
So I have another thing that I love doing down there. If money's not an object, or if you have a big group, it's called the Aristocat. It's basically a private catamaran. I've done it with my friends. I've done it with my parents. We've done it all together. Basically have a giant catamaran that will take you wherever you want. So you can go over to Norman Island and you can go to the Willie T. That's adults only. Don't bring your kids there. It gets a little crazy. You can go to there's a shipwreck right over around there. It was an old mail ship, mail, MAIL ship, British ship that sunk there that you can just jump in. If you're a scuba diver, you can go down. If not, you can just jump in and see a shipwreck. It's pretty cool. They'll take you all around. They'll give you drinks. They'll provide food if you want, or they'll take you to the many little beach restaurants on places that you really can't get to unless you have a boat. I vaguely remember what we paid a few years ago, but I just went on their website before we came on. For 10 people in next January, you can get a catamaran all day for $1,400. So, like, if you really think it's not, it's not cheap or anything like that, but it's just one of those experiences that you'll never forget. I mean, it's awesome. It's a nice big catamaran. So, like you said about the waves not being very rough out there, even if you get a little seasick, it's still a big thing, and it's just awesome. It's my wife and I were just talking about it tonight, like it was just happened yesterday.
So one of the things that I kind of noticed going out there too is if you look at these different port adventures, a lot of times they can really add up. And so depending upon the size of your family, I know that there was a family with us when we went on the Fantasy out to Tortola, and they rented a private boat because it was cheaper to do that boat for the day for the 6 of them than it was to pay for 6 different people on the port excursion. So if you go with a group or if you have a larger family, a lot of times it may sound like a lot, as you say, $1,400, but if you had, a big group, traveling together out there, that's, like $140 a day for 10 people. So it's not really that bad.
Yeah. So to go to Joost Van Dyke on Disney, which is Joost Van Dyke Beach Day, is $114 per adult. Now, you could take a cab to the West End, get on a ferry, and get there for a fraction of that, but you don't have the Disney guarantee of not missing the boat, or at least in that case, you can get it to next day in St. Thomas. It's not the end of the world. So, yeah, I was looking at their prices, and you're right. Like, if you got 10 people together, you would pay pretty much that to go on a private catamaran all day.
And to Chris's point, and I'm not sure if you can talk about this, Adam, you brought up the one catamaran, the Aristocat, but that was another thing that not being as familiar with the Caribbean as our family was, or our family was not very familiar with the Caribbean. Being part of a Facebook group, there was a lot of mention of different private boats that you could rent that took you to places to do different things. And the one thing that I noticed was when I tried to go on and look and see what the prices were, pretty much everything was sold out on a lot of those too. So if those popular type of boats, to your point, Chris, with the baths, is another one of those things that if you're going on one of these cruises, you probably need to be looking at that well into the future and booking those to make sure you got your spot.
Yeah, like the Aristocats website, like I went on tonight, and so we were supposed to be on that 7-night fantasy cruise in January that we bumped a year till January 2022. Hopefully that works out for us and everyone else. I was looking, so they already had their schedule open for next January. Like I could go on, put my $500 deposit or $200, whatever. I think it was a couple $100 deposit, and reserve the catamaran for that day already. So you can definitely book these far in advance. So I'm not 100% familiar with their cancellation policies and all that stuff, but yeah. So it is crazy when you think about that, to book in advance.
Yeah. Anything else about Tortola?
No, I think that's it. There is the famous Willie T. I did mention it. It's a pirate ship type old boat in off of Norman Island. It can get a little rowdy there. Mainly at night, it gets super rowdy. I've only ever been there during the day because people will pull their boats in, anchor there, and it's a little restaurant and stuff, and things get kind of crazy. And you jump off the top of the boat into the water. It's like a thing. If you go to their website, you'll see people doing it. That's definitely another really fun thing if you're there with adults only. Definitely don't bring your children there because you see you can see some things. That's just another interesting thing down there. So many like little interesting things, especially like interesting little restaurants. I mean, the cruise ships never would be there for nighttime, but there's so many stories I could tell about just different like hole in the wall restaurants that you would just love to eat at every day if you could.
Anything you remember that stands out? Either that or I'm just going to throw this one, but shopping wise too. Any stores or restaurants that stand out you can throw out to people?
Yeah, not so much shopping. St. Thomas would be your real spot for that. Just really interesting. You think about shopping and just the different worlds of St. Thomas to Tortola, and considering how close they are, where you have a Walmart and Home Depot in St. Thomas, you literally have nothing like that even close in Tortola. Like they have kept it very uncommercialized, no big business, very focused on locals owning and controlling, even buying a house. If you want to buy a house as an American there, you put a bid in. Even if you put a bid in asking and they accept it, I believe it's 60 or 90 days, locals can take it from you. Meaning if you buy a house for $500,000 and some local comes a month later, says, I want that house, it's his. So at that price. So it's kind of difficult for Americans to buy homes there. So it is very underdeveloped and very off the beaten path. So in the port, there's like Pussers, Rum. They have a nice little restaurant and bar, and it's fun to get stuff from there. But a lot of the other stuff would be like you'd have to rent a car to get to. My point was in St. Thomas we have to land in St. Thomas and take a ferry over to Tortola to get there, and you'd always see people coming into St. Thomas and going to Walmart and just buying like toilet paper, paper towels, bringing back buckets of fast food. Because there's not a McDonald's in Tortola. These people will come back and just bring like KFC back, McDonald's, Burger King, toilet paper. You'd see them sitting on the thing, and it was just an interesting like dynamic because it was cheaper for them to go over on the ferry, go through customs, go to Walmart, and go back than it was to buy stuff on Tortola.
It's funny. I don't do the milk run that we call it the milk run that goes through Southeast Alaska. And I don't do it very often, but you see the same thing there where people come up to Anchorage to get a Costco, Walmart, whatnot, and they get their big bags going back to all the little towns through Southeast. So, well, let's just turn it to this. Who wants to start off? Well, I thought it'd be kind of fun to look at what Disney has to offer and just pull out one adventure you think that you and your family would like to do if you went back to Tortola. And hopefully you're going to be there, Adam. You want to start off with this?
Yeah, so I picked out. I wrote down 3. I did mention all of them, but I'll focus on the Rib Boat and Jost Van Dyke shore excursion. So it seemed like a smaller boat, so I would guess that would be like family of 6 or less, and it was $152 for an adult. I don't believe there was any discounts for kids, but I could be wrong. That got you out in the water. It probably got you to do some snorkeling, to see the islands from afar, and then spend some time on Jost Van Dyke. That to me would be my wheelhouse, and you have the guarantee of getting back to the boat from Disney. So there's a little peace of mind in there. Otherwise, you're taking a lot of steps to get over to Jost Van Dyke. Things could go wrong because locals operate on a different schedule.
Chris, how about you?
So I'll go ahead and recommend what I mentioned as well. It's a Jeep Island tour, and it includes a 2-hour stop at a beach that's super secluded. We swam there. There were fish all around us. There was some like American guy who had a bar made out of like driftwood and sheet metal. And like there was a stray dog that came and played with me in the water and laid down with us. We also went to the tallest point on the island and did a lookout. Also, you physically drive, so if that's something you're into, it's fun to be able to drive in another country, another island. But also, if that's scary to you, maybe pass on this one because Tortola driving is not messing around. It's intense. But I love driving, so I was into it. So that would be my recommendation. It's not too expensive, but it's more expensive than other things you could do there. I think it might have been something like $150 per person. So again, if you're a big family of 4, that gets pretty pricey.
So I'm gonna go. When we were there, we went on one of the snorkeling boats. It was pretty fun. We went to 2 different snorkeling spots, and then they take you over to the beach for probably about half an hour, 45 minutes or so. You could get some drinks. I don't know if I'd do that one again. I think I'd probably try and do something like you, Adam. Go over to Joost Van Dyke. So if your kids are a little bit older, I'm going to go with the Discover Scuba in Tortola. So my wife and oldest son did this. They really had a blast doing that. You go out on a boat for about 25 minutes. You're going to meet up with your instructor, and sometimes they usually take about 3 or 4. And you were kind of talking about it. Were you with the group, Adam, when you did yours?
Actually, I happened to be alone that day just because it was a random day in February, and there wasn't a lot of people there.
So usually you'll have an instructor with like somewhere between 2 to 4 people. They'll take you out. And this one you do 40 minutes. You get down to 35 feet down there. You get to see a lot of different marine life, and it's a great way. If you've ever thought about scuba diving, it's a great way to do an intro to it. Check out if it's for you, and maybe work on your certification when you get back. So I think that's what I'm going to recommend this time. And these tend to be a little bit pricier. It's $162 per person, 12 and up. So you have to be 12 and up to be able to do this one. So, well, with that, let's move on over to St. Thomas. Now, have you been to St. Thomas with a cruise ship then, Adam? You hadn't been with
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, many times actually on the St. Thomas thing, both staying there and on a cruise ship. So
okay. Well, before we jump into it, before you talk about some of the things you've experienced, St. Thomas is actually part of the U.S. Virgin Islands. So we're going to move over from the British over to the U.S. side. It is the world's most heavily trafficked port, and it's not uncommon to have 6 cruise ships there. And I think when we pulled in, we were the first ones in there. And I think I got to be honest, man, I've kind of paid attention generally, other than when we went to Grand Cayman. Disney seems to be like one of the first ships into port usually, which the good thing about that is the traffic at the port maybe died down a little bit. You may be able to get out and on your way before, a second or third or fourth cruise ship pulls in. But as you were talking about, boasts and unparalleled duty-free shopping, and it features the world-famous Magens Bay. So I'm not sure if you've been there or not. And they do drive on the left-hand side though, Chris. So you can you can use your Tortola experience and drive on the left-hand side if you decide to rent a car in St. Thomas. So let's jump into it. And what are some of the things that you've experienced there, Adam?
Okay, so when you go in the big port's basically a big shopping mall. So if you're there's 2 ports. If you're on Disney's always in the good port, I call it. The other port's further away, and it seems like the giant Royal Caribbean boats have to go there. So Disney's generally on the port so there's a shopping mall there. St. Thomas has a whole interesting dichotomy of things going on there. It's a lot more built up. Like I said, there's a Walmart, there's a Home Depot there. You have the shopping district. You have a lot of houses. You have a lot of Americans come in because we can just go buy a house there like it's, down the street. So you have a lot of people with like second, third homes there. It's just like interesting, but it's definitely been way built up over the last 20 years. A lot has changed, a lot more traffic, a lot more people. And then it doesn't necessarily mean that's a good thing, because if you go to Magens Bay and there's 6 cruise ships in, it's like going to the pink sand beaches of Bermuda when everyone's there. It's like a complete cluster. It's packed. So you have to be really selective and aware of how many people are coming off those boats, because just like St. Martin, like you could have 20,000 people just show up to the island at once. There's a few things that we have learned and kind of just do. So you kind of just can decide, like, do you want a beach day? Do you want to go shopping? It's a pretty good place to go shopping, whether you want jewelry, watches, Rolexes, tags, whatever, alcohol, cigarettes. I mean, anything that you want, they sell pretty much. And the prices are pretty good. I try not to go there that often because my wife knows a jeweler down there now, and she's always wanting something new. So it's whatever my cruise costs, I kind of almost have to double it. It's got to be ready for those things. So it's just like, so you kind of have to decide what you want to do before you get off. I know that's like on everything, but you can walk from the port. It's about a half mile, three-quarter mile walk from the port to the town. And that's how we normally start our day. We'll walk to the town because, like I said, we like to visit, or I don't like to visit. My wife likes to visit the jewelry store. Then you can decide what you want to do. So we normally get a cab from there and go to the beaches.
So what is so famous about Magens Bay? I'm gonna be a total newbie here. Like, what makes it so special that makes people want to go there?
Okay, so it's beautiful. It's a cove beach. So, like, think about a horseshoe. So you have like pristine ocean, very little wave. You have good snorkeling. Actually, could send you a video of me chasing some stingrays around at Magens Bay. But again, they have a little beach bar. They have bar service, so people bring you drinks. It's chill. It's relaxed. It's pretty. But there's 6 cruise ships there. It's packed. It is packed. No one's there. It's a regular old Saturday when no cruise ships show up. Go there. Have a great time. It's amazing.
So do you have any beaches that you would give up that you've been to that you would recommend?
It's tough on St. Thomas because you have the other side of the island, Koki Beach, but Coral World is there. Coral World is there. It's like kind of like an aquarium, eco fish thing, mini aquarium. It's a nice beach, but that place brings extra people there. And that's one of them. But you really look at it, there's a couple resorts like where the Four Seasons Hotel is. They have a nice beach, but again, you're dealing with a hotel. So St. Thomas doesn't have like a ton of just like public open beaches. There's a beach down by the airport, but you're dealing with planes landing. It's kind of tough. I actually would recommend when we get to the Sea Excursions part is going over St. John's if you want a beach. If you want a beach and don't want to have a lot of people, go over to St. John's.
It seems like a lot of people go to St. Thomas just to immediately leave and go to St. John's, which I guess now that makes more sense to me. I've never been, so, this is news to me. Most Disney, Eastern Caribbean Disney cruises go to St. Thomas and Tortola, but ours went to San Juan instead of St. Thomas. So that's why I missed out on St. Thomas when I did the Eastern Caribbean. And I kind of intentionally picked, honestly, the cruise we did because it was cool to go to San Juan to me. I wanted to see that. But anyway, I will say I've heard that the ferry that goes over to St. John's, if you're prone to motion sickness, as with any ferry to any sort of other island on these things, it's not going to feel like when you're on the ship. It will feel a lot more rocky. And honestly, it's not going to feel like what you might have experienced when you tender, because those are very short distances from the boat or from the ship to the shore. So just flagging for folks that, the ferry might not be an option for you if you feel really motion sick. I do think that I hear a lot of really great things about St. John's as well.
So I guess to throw it back to you, Adam, any other advice you'd have on St. Thomas or other experiences you've had?
Like I said, I mentioned Koki Beach and Coral World. So when I was a kid, I was probably like 12. I remember because I had a Game Boy. My parents took me on. It was called the Atlantis submarine then. I know there's multiple ones throughout the Caribbean. But there is an excursion through Disney. It seems like the price is wrong because I can't believe it. But it's Coral World and Ocean, Land and Sea. It's $65. It's not the same submarine, but you go in a submarine type vehicle and it says 8 feet underwater, but it's still the same experience. It's like being on the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea or the Nemo submarines in Disneyland. But I had this experience as a kid, and I literally have never forgotten it. I went on a submarine. My mind was blown. They took us all around. It was just amazing. So there are things like that down there that you can do. There's like a tiki boat with a glass bottom boat that runs out of the main area. There is stuff you can find, and there is stuff you can do that will be, you'll remember for the rest of your life. It's just paying for it and finding it. You can start with a Disney list of things to do because that's, like I said, I caught that one for Shore Excursion there, but I was like, oh my God, I did that when I was 12 and it was amazing. Those are the things I would say are just things to watch out for and to pay attention to because it's just amazing. So you can find yourself in a good spot down there.
Chris, have you ever been in a submarine besides the one at Disneyland?
I've been in the Disneyland submarines, and those are very real. Here's the thing about those. Those are the most claustrophobic ride, I'm pretty sure, at any Disney park. And so my husband categorically refuses to go again. We did it once, and he's like, all right, we did it, and I will never be riding those again. But I went on them when they were 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and I was a child, like a kid. I don't know, I must have been maybe like 6. they left a huge impression on me because I couldn't understand the technology. Like my brain literally couldn't compute how it felt like we were diving. It did not occur to me that they were just blowing bubbles in front of the window. So I thought like, we dove, we went underwater and there's all these things. Like I was just like, wow. So I do think that, these glass-sided boats that are kind of similar are probably going to make all the kids real happy. And, since coral reefs are dying everywhere, see them while you can. I would say that would be like a worthwhile excursion.
Yeah, it looks pretty amazing. I'm looking at the picture right here. And they've got like about 8 kids and 2 adults in there. They're all just checking it out. So, and I'm like you, Adam. That's kind of amazing price-wise. I thought it would be a lot more than that.
Yeah, I think that's a misprint. I'm like, wait a minute. But, and I had the same exact, what Chris just said, with the bubbles in Florida, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. I never forgot that. And I remember I went to Disney World when I was a real young kid, like 1986 to like 1990, call it 1 or 2. And then I didn't go back for another 5 years. And in that 5 years, when they closed 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and when I got back there, I was 16, so it was 1996. I took a beeline back there, and I got back there, and I just saw an empty pool, and I was devastated. I was like, 20,000 Leagues is gone? It was like before internet chat rooms and stuff, so I didn't know. I was like, it's gone? I was like completely just heartbroken. So.
I mean, I could see that of all things was actually a big surprise to me because the way that Disney World handles aging attractions is just to leave them there and like not really make changes to them very often. But Disneyland, the land is too valuable to leave an aging thing that isn't popular. And so they always are repurposing or tearing out rides and building new things. And so there have been talks for now, probably the last 5 to 10 years of getting rid of Finding Nemo because the land that it sits on at Disneyland is massive. It's really hard to conceptualize how big that ride is because Autopia is driving up and around and through all of it. But that plot of land, if they ever wanted to do like a Tron roller coaster or a big e-ticket ride, Finding Nemo would go. It'd be one of the first things to go. I do think there's probably a whole generation of kids who will experience what you experienced, except instead of looking for 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, they're going to be looking for Nemo and his friends. Also, the operating costs are massive on that ride. It's a very expensive ride to operate, so I could see them getting rid of it. But with these shore excursions, it's kind of like the real deal. I would definitely take my kid on something like that.
Definitely recommend it.
Well, if there's nothing else, let's finish up with our round. Chris, you want to go first this time as far as what you're going to pick to do when you go back to St. Thomas?
Yeah. Okay. So bear with me because I have to explain why. There's this place in Florida called Discovery Cove, and it's like SeaWorld luxury theme park that caps its limit at like, I don't know, 900 people a day or something. And it's like an all-inclusive, food is included, drinks are included. You swim with dolphins, you swim in a man-made like coral reef, all this stuff. We went, we loved it, we thought it was really cool. However, they had this thing called the Sea Trek where you wear like a helmet and attached to the helmet is an airline and they weight you down and you walk on the bottom of the ocean floor. But there you're walking on the bottom of their aquarium, basically. But I always thought like, man, that looks claustrophobic. But also I want to try that. And when I was going through what they had to do at St. Thomas, they have a Sea Trek and it's at Coral World in like a more natural environment. And it also includes admission into Coral World. It's like, what, $100 or so, but it seems like a pretty substantial activity that you can like do this cool thing where you're walking on the bottom of the sea floor, but you're still able to breathe. You don't have to be scuba certified or anything like that. I would say that's what I would pick if I had to pick right now, which I do. So that's what I pick.
Adam, you want to go second or last?
I can go second. So we mentioned Coral World, but I did two other ones. St. John's on your own, $45, and that's just, I guess, getting you there and back. And then St. John's Trunk Bay, which is like a really great snorkeling area, nice beach. Perfect. That's $75. So I guess they transfer you once you get over there to Trunk Bay. So overall, I didn't think those were too horrible because otherwise you're taking a taxi to the ferry and then to Trunk Bay. So you're pretty much 3 steps to get there. So I would imagine the costs wouldn't be too out of line for the $75 charge from Disney.
I'm going to tell on myself. I enjoy going to the beach, but I'm not a guy that likes to sit on the beach all day long. I kind of get bored. I get antsy. I wish I could sit there and read a book. I don't know, man. Like, it just doesn't work out. But I'm going to go without kids to St. Thomas. They're going to be hanging out with the grandparents doing something else. And my wife and I are going to do this like 3 days of the fantasy where you got 3 sea days. You can just do whatever you want. I think I'm going to try the St. John's Champagne catamaran sail and snorkel. So you get on your own catamaran there. They with all everybody else's kids, I guess, except for yours, take you over to St. John's. You get an hour and a half, 2 hours on the beach. That's enough beach time for me to kind of hang out, soak up the sun. And I just love being on boats, to be completely honest. And you get a nice hour sail back with champagne, cheeses, and some fruits. So just kind of a nice relaxing day, I think, for me. So Chris is laughing at me.
Can't beat that.
But I do like your idea, Chris, where, being able to do something that you're not going to be able to do anywhere else. And so these are the times to try it when you're out on these different cruises and some of the different vacations you take. So, well, I guess as we kind of finish up tonight, Adam, I really want to thank you for coming on and helping us. Anything else you can think of about Tortola or St. Thomas?
No, I just hope to get back there soon. The flights are pretty cheap to St. Thomas right now from the States, but I know you have to do a little COVID testing to come and go. But if you're okay with that or you can navigate it, I would recommend taking advantage of the cheap flights. And if you're comfortable flying, going down to St. Thomas. It's open air. Weather's great. You don't have to worry about eating indoors. You can do the old outdoor dining and outdoor activities. So it should be a little less COVID stress down there. But hopefully one day we get back on the cruise ships. My guess is in the fall.
Chris, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
No. I don't know what I prefer. I think Eastern and Western are both great itineraries, but Eastern gets more sea days, so that's my vote. In that case, these shore excursions that we taught you about today, those are your options. And that's what you would be doing. So they're both really beautiful islands. I've personally been to Tortola and seen a lot of pictures of St. Thomas. If you do end up finding yourself on an Eastern Caribbean, you're lucky because they're really, really beautiful and they're very different than the islands on the Western Caribbean.
Well, I guess as we kind of finish up tonight, Adam, once again, thanks for coming on. I always appreciate all the help you've done over the years with our show, and I really hope that sailing on the Fantasy goes for you. And I know you guys have some plans down at Walt Disney World, I think, this summer, right?
Yeah, we're hopefully going first week of May and then around the 50th in October. Cross our fingers, our canceled Alani trip is back on for this July. I'll be celebrating my 41st birthday. So it's in my 40th. But my wife turns 40, so we hit it all. So
you still get it.
Yeah.
Not a better place to do it than over in Alani in the islands. So good on you guys. Well, when you get back from that trip, we'd love to have you come back on. We'll talk some Alani with you. And like I said, I hope that fantasy sailing goes. You do have a fantasy sailing, right? That's in the... Yeah,
fantasy January, first week of January next year.
Okay, so, well, man, if we're still not sailing then...
I know. That's what I always say. But we said that last year. Hey, if we're not sailing next year, we're in serious trouble. Well, we got in serious trouble. Yeah. So,
All right. Well, once again, Adam, thanks for coming on. All the best to you and your family back there, and we'll talk to you when you get back from the islands.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. Have a good one.
Well, that's a wrap for our second Port Adventure show. Hope you're enjoying these shows as we move on into 2021. We're going to bring you a different one each and every month. Next month, we turn our focus to Cozumel, and I think we may touch back on Tortola again. The guest that we have coming on board to talk about Cozumel, I think she's had some opportunities to spend time in Tortola as well, so look for that in March. I really once again would like to thank Adam for coming on and sharing his and his family's experiences spending time on the beautiful island of Tortola. and St. Thomas. And one of the episodes that I'm really looking for some help from you guys out there is if there's somebody who's been to Nassau several times and has experienced some different port excursions there. I know it's one of those tough ports. A lot of people tend not to get off the ship there and just want to spend that time on the ship. But if you have gone to Nassau and spent some time on the islands and done some fun excursions, reach out to me, Steve at DCLpodcast.com, and we'll get you set up to do that episode at a later date. Well, between now and our next show, if you are heading out on a staycation, a vacation, or just kind of wandering around the home aimlessly like some of us are sometimes, on behalf of myself, Steve, Christy, and Chris, all of us here at the DCL Podcast, we want to wish you and your family all the best out there. Be well, and we'll see you next time on the DCL Podcast. The DCL Podcast is not affiliated with the Disney Cruise Line, Walt Disney Company, Adventures by Disney, or Run Disney. All of the opinions expressed on our shows are those of the hosts and the guests who appear on the show. If you have any questions about any of these products, please contact the Walt Disney Company.